Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. This program features in-depth conversations with the leading names in the subjects of UFOs, abductees, the paranormal, panel discussions, and the very best and brightest of the next generation of writers and researchers. Meanwhile Here on Earth, the show breaking new ground in alternative talk with your intrepid host, veteran investigative writer and researcher, Peter Robbins.
Hello, this is Peter Robbins, and the program is Meanwhile Here on Earth. You're watching or listening on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, and should you wish to subscribe to KGRA's vast archive, if you use my first name, Peter, as your code, you'll receive a 30% discount off. You can follow our shows on Spreaker.com, on YouTube, and here on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting website. So, one of those weeks where we had absolutely nothing in the news about UFOs or unidentified flying objects or concerns thereof. I kid, of course. On Friday, a U.S. fighter aircraft shot down an object threatening airspace, so they say, over Alaska. An F-22 fighter pilot who saw the object said it interfered with their sensors and had no propulsion system. On Saturday and Sunday, additional objects were shot down over Canada and near the U.S. border, and the story continues. Some of you probably watched the press conference from the White House this afternoon, and I was one of them. The coverage interested me as much as the press conference, not that we got any answers, but it didn't really matter whether you were seeing the reporting on it on CNBC or Fox, whether it was a conservative or a progressive venue. They were all complaining for all the right reasons and all together. This coverage is NBC, but Fox's was ironically almost identical. It just sums up what went on this afternoon. There are many theories, but precious few answers about the U.S. downed 3 unidentified airborne objects in as many days over the weekend. Now the White House, under fire for a lack of transparency over the incursions, must contend with frustrated lawmakers and a mystified public, and the Biden administration's failure to launch a coherent communication strategy about the shootdowns. Quote, "In times of uncertainty, leaders need to be as transparent as possible with the public," Larry Hogan, the former Republican governor from Maryland, tweeted today. After shooting down 3 airborne objects, President Biden needs to communicate directly with the nation about what we know and what we don't, end quote. With fighter jets downing unknown objects over U.S. territory, the White House has revealed little about what precisely is happening and whether the country is under threat. Are the objects harmless weather balloons or spy craft sent by foreign powers bent on doing America's harm? President Biden hasn't said. In the absence of hard facts, uniform speculation is filling the information vacuum, including whether the objects are visiting space aliens. A U.S. general, Air Force general, and in this case, they're speaking of General Glenn Van Herk, head of NORAD and the U.S. Northern Command, refused to even rule out the far-fetched possibility. A little bit of bias there on their part. Fascinating, isn't it? I find the language that's being used and how it's been deployed just over a few short days of originally reports of unidentified objects, flying objects, UFOs, and now uniformly these being referred to as flying objects. Not even a hint or a reference to UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. These are objects, not phenomena. The internet has already gone a little wild with speculation, needless to say, and even some of the imagery for me is very telling just in the past few days. and just images capturing the popular culture aspect of this, as well as some schematics from the news stations. This is one of the first alleged leaked. When you see those two words together, they kind of let them cancel each other out. This is a depiction of one of these tic-tac type objects caught up in the snow somewhere. I don't know any better than anyone else what we're dealing with here. I think the story is going to accelerate over the next few days. I think there is a longing, a wish on the part of many people who have ever loved any episode of the X-Files to go to the mantra on the poster, and I want to believe. We want to believe in the exotic. We want to believe they're real. They're out there. We know it. They're here as well. I don't think these are them, but it will be very interesting to see how the story develops. One last thought is going back to certain declassified documents from early in the UFO cover-up, and I'm talking 1947 thereabouts. We see a plea on part of certain agencies, offices, service branches in classified communication saying, this is not ours. Is it yours? And something classified above our need to know. If so, this seems to be completely classified above the Air Force's need to know, unless it's completely not ours. And we're going to find that out, I think, sooner than later. Tonight's guest is an old friend who is someone who is making me question some of my basic beliefs on an aspect of UFO studies that I have a problem with. Dale Triplett is an editor who edited more than 30 books. He's a teacher. He is a total character and a great raconteur. He is one of the best traveled, most observant people that I know. And he served in both the United States Marine Corps and Air Force, as he says, without distinction. I beg to differ. And at the same time, as a trucker, drove a big rig for over 1 million miles around the United States, waited on thousands of tables, laughed more often than not, believes in the substance of the secret space program, and spends a lot of time staring at the stars, wondering about what we don't know. Dale, welcome to Meanwhile Here on Earth. Is your audio?
Are we good? We good to go? Are we in?
I think.
Okay, there we go.
We're 5 by 5.
Okay, good. Chanel gave us a thumbs up.
Welcome to the show, my brother.
Thank you. It's been too long.
The other night when we were talking, and you were talking about memories that you had recovered over the years, I found myself almost immediately drifting back to my years working with Bud Hopkins, working with abductees, where often memories are repressed, delayed, veiled, behind screens, and not to mention the history that we human beings have of influencing the way each other perceives, especially at the military intelligence level. The work of the Tavistock Institute, the Manchurian Canaanite training for American intelligence that came out of Chinese procedures during the Korean War. And I think the one thing I can say I know for sure is I have no idea in hell what goes on behind certain scenes, and those that purport to often don't as well. Let's begin at the beginning, though, because without a sense of who you are and how you became who you are, I think the things you're going to share with us, which I find absolutely fascinating, will be of less impact and value. So going back to the beginning, are you originally an Arkansas native?
No, born in Springfield, Missouri, up just southwest there. Dad, who you know, having met both of my parents, and 54th wedding anniversary for them tomorrow. So
yes,
props to Mom and Dad.
A very happy wedding anniversary to you too.
Dad joined the Air Force in 1972 when I was just a little over a year old. And from that time on, we left Missouri, lived in Texas, and went to Illinois briefly, and at Dias Air Force Base in Abilene, where my youngest brother was born. Then we went to Germany for the first time in 76 and was there from 76 to 78. Came back and lived in La Junta, Colorado at a small remote bombing site, mock bombs for B-52s back in the day. Dad was stationed there. Went back to Germany in December of 81, 1 year after Rendlesham, and stayed there till I graduated high school, 89. And then I went to college for a year back stateside, and then went back to Europe and worked for the military banking system for a while. But I ended up going in the Marines when I was 23 in 1994. I was in from 94 to 98, active duty in the Corps. I was a 1161 HVAC mechanic, but I didn't work in my field a lot. Having been around the maintenance field of my dad growing up, it was like I had been in the Air Force for 17 years before I even joined the military. So I did a lot of maintenance operations and control, the supply side of elements until the last 8 months when I was in the Marines. And then they actually had me doing my job. I had to try and figure it out. I hadn't touched a piece of equipment for 4 years. And they're like, you need to do this. I'm like, okay.
Hold that thought for a minute. And we're going to come back to this. But going back again, you really grew up in a military culture with a real international sense of things.
Very, very much so. It was a lot different than my cousins back in Missouri.
I guess.
A lot more racially diverse. And just that exposure as a young American, you still had all of the amenities on the base. You still had your Dr. Peppers and burgers and stuff, but you still were in a foreign country. And this is the height of the Cold War. It was a very, very different time. The wall came down the year I graduated high school. I was actually in Oklahoma when that happened. As
a boy, and I mean, say between the ages of 5 and 10, my dad was an Army Air Corps veteran, World War II. And especially at that age, I grew up in awe of his military service. And had I not come of age, service age during Vietnam, a war I very much was opposed to, I might well have followed him into the Air Force. As a kid that age, what were your dreams of just following your dad into the military, or did it go beyond that? What kind of books were you drawn to?
It felt like something I would have eventually go to, but I wanted to be an officer. So when I went off to college initially, I was going to be a preacher. I was going to be a preacher in the Church of Christ, and that took a very different path. But always had close ties with the military. Every generation of my family's been in the military since the 1640s.
Good Lord!
In service to America and service to the Crown, and service to the Confederacy and the Union as well. So it's a very proud military tradition.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting your parents, but especially getting to know your dad when they came to New York City, and I had the good fortune to be their guide. Our conversations were very wide ranging, and we cut across a lot of different backgrounds just in ourselves. I have a sense of the way you were brought up from spending time with your parents, and I know you have a strong internal moral code. Am I correct in assuming that 23 is pretty late for most men?
I was an old man. I felt like an old man when I got there, and I mean,
considering the mythology of the difficulty and the challenge of the training, to put it mildly, what possessed you?
I was married. My first wife at the time, I was up in Alaska, and was kind of working worthless jobs. And just on a whim, I went into the Air Force recruiter, and they had a waiting list of about a year.
Oh my!
And I said, you know what? I'll just go talk to the Marines. which is, I am not a jock. I was student body president. I was homecoming king. I was chess club, computer
There we
club.
go.
I was not a jock. I've seen videos of me playing soccer in sixth grade, and they should be banned. But I didn't even tell my wife. I went in and I signed up in the Corps and was gone. And just about 2 weeks later, I was shipped off to boot camp. That didn't go over real good. But,
Yes.
don't regret it. I don't regret it one bit, the time in the Corps. And
we talk a bit about, before we get into anything else, talk a bit about the training that sets this apart from any other kind of training in the world, really.
I was in 16th of May, 1994. Marine boot camp at the time was 3.5 months. This was the pre-Crucible era. We didn't have what they have the Crucible now. It was tough. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I think we started with 99 guys, and there were 53 of us that finished. So there was quite the attrition rate through it, and it even had some physical issues where I thought I was going to have to stay there for a little bit longer. But thankfully, I graduated in 5th of August that summer, and went back to Alaska and had my schooling at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina in Jacksonville. That's where my daughter was born. That was my initial base, was 2.5 years at Camp Lejeune. And then the 8 months over at Camp Hansen in Okinawa. And there, unfortunately, my infant son passed away.
Uh-huh.
And I came back, and the last 8 months of my time in the Marines, I was attached to Marine Air Control Squadron 2-3 in Denver. But I was working as a recruiter's assistant up in Casper, Wyoming. And I stayed in Wyoming for about 7.5 years. That's where I ended, because I was with the Wyoming Air Guard. I went in tail end of 2001 to join the Air National Guard as a Load Master on C-130s.
On a really personal note here, one of the things that you are trained to do is to be desensitized, to be broken down so you can be built up again, to perform at times the impossibly difficult job that Marines have been called on to perform. You become a hard guy if you're not. And I know you well enough to know you have a wide and soaring intellect. You're a man of real sensitivity. You're well traveled at that time, unlike many of your fellow recruits. And then you have to deal with the death of an infant son and still, hold the banner high and behave in a certain manner. What was that like?
I always joke that I liked Corporal so much I made it 3 times. I had a little bit of an ornery streak in me when I was in the Corps, and learned to work hard, learn to play hard, and quite a bit of drinking back in those days. Just really, that was part of the culture, though. Very much a part of the culture. That's at Camp Hansen there. That image on the left. I was getting ready to go to the Northern Training Area, which is a jungle warfare survival school, and I was the acting platoon sergeant for our group. And then there on the right was the day I finished my check ride and was a fully qualified loadmaster on C-130s. I was at a Little Rock. What you don't see in that image is that I've got a beer in one hand and a scotch in the other, and I'm on a guy's shoulders. I'm standing up and being paraded around the NCO club at Little Rock, or the All Ranks Club.
I got it. Okay. In fact, I'm just loading that. There we go.
Yeah.
Semper Fi.
Semper Fi and aim high.
That's a classic.
That was a good day. That was a really good day. Man, I look 23 and I still look like I'm 14 there.
But what that 14-year-old just been through.
Oh my goodness, to go back to do it all over again. That's in Okinawa at Camp Hansen. Just got there. So
Dale, growing up, again, I just try to imagine myself at the ages you were in places that I would consider incredibly exotic, these foreign cultures, and just being a human sponge and soaking it in. At some point in your childhood or your adolescence or early adulthood, did you become interested at all or have any interest in the subject of UFOs or anything really non-standard in the paranormal realm?
I was a huge fan really young, 4 and 5 even. I was watching In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. And any book I could get my hands on, Easter Island, anything about UFOs, and I was exposed to the phenomenon very, very young. My first sighting, I was 4 or 5 in Abilene, Texas, and just lying in the backyard in the grass like a kid, just staring up at the sky. And there was a triangle shape that was like a creamsicle color, and it was just a stark open sky in Texas. Not a cloud anywhere. But I just remember thinking, and it didn't scare me, but I didn't know what it was. But I think from that moment I was hooked, that I had to absolutely keep chasing and go down that rabbit hole, and I've been doing it ever since. So I was very young to have that start. And then through in Europe, I encountered shadow beings at the end of my bed, and it's reading some of Bud's stuff element there, whether the sleep paralysis will kick in and you're just in that mortal fear. But that was the first time I ever felt that I was in the presence of something that was not good.
Was this in Europe as
this
a
was
boy?
In Germany. That was in Hahn. That would have been probably about 1982, 83. And so I had I'd been in gifted and talented programs from elementary on, and I got, even by myself, sometimes I was taken to base. Had some medicals. I remember having all the probes in my head and stuff, and playing the flashcards and the memory elements, doing that with people that weren't the regular counselors at the school. These were outsiders that had come in, and there was a few of us that were selected to do some testing with them.
Do you think this was standard with other young people whose parents were in the military on base schools like this?
I think so. And conversations I've had with friends since, people that I grew up with in Germany or in the military, had very, very similar experiences. A lot of it like the Montauk School elements, and those documents that what's the name of the institute? I don't know if it's Brookings or what, but I had to go through those tests when I was young, and I know that a lot of my friends did. Not everyone. My brothers didn't, but I have 2 younger brothers. One ended up being retired from the Air Force as well as a pilot. He's and actually just starts for Southwest, so hooked me up with the buddy passes now. But there was always seemed to be something. I was an avid reader from very, very young age, and anything I could get my hands on just to read it that was about the unknown, unexplained, and even fiction. I said I have edited more than 50 novels actually now, 52 to date.
Did either of your parents have an interest in this subject that you were aware of growing up?
No, not. Our life revolved around church and family, and we were at church Sunday morning, Sunday night, sometimes Monday evening devotionals, Wednesday evening Bible study, and then our social life was around all the people from church as well, and that'd be in Boy Scouts. My scoutmasters then were mostly guys from church, but we'd sit around the campfires and we'd talk and the ghost stories, and had just always intrigued me. Anything that, and it's like I didn't want to know exactly what, perhaps, but I knew that half of the battle and the greatest question we can always ask is we don't know, and just being able to pursue it and maybe make a little bit of sense out of it or some semblance.
There came a time during your time in the Marines that, let's call it kind of a BC AD moment, when you were asked to report to a certain location and either put through tests. Something started, a procedure started that you returned to at times. How did this happen? Can you describe us the beginning as best you can remember?
The first few days when you're in boot camp, and this is in San Diego, Marine Corps Recruit Depot, lots of testing. You take the ASVAB again, you go through, and you'll take the Morse code test, you do hearing tests, medical, and you're exhausted, you're sleep deprived, and they really just break you down those first few days. I was in the Morse code testing, and any guy that's ever been in the military, you're sitting there in that little booth, and you think you hear something like, number 3, please quit hitting your button. There's nothing playing. That had a corporal come in, not a drill instructor, but he tapped me on the shoulder and says, "You've been selected for special testing." And it's like, "I'm not done with this test." And he's like, "Grab your stuff, let's go." And myself and one other recruit followed this corporal, and we went to the main administration building there in San Diego. It's great, big, long, yellow, epic looking thing. Any jarhead will remember it. But we went into the building and went downstairs into the basement. And it's a long corridor, lots of pipes and overhead lighting. And we're trying to keep up. This guy was speed walking with us. When we get there, we stand outside of a door, and there's probably 5 or 6 guys lined up from you. You line up A to B, they call it, asshole to belly button. You're bumped up. And you're leaning on the guy in front of you, and trying to catch a cat nap and do this slow shuffle forward. When we got up to the room, you could see that there was a set of seats, brown and orange plastic, old molded 70s looking thing. And guys were sitting in those seats, and they're doing a little horseshoe around to go into this office. The office door opened, typical military gray desk, a stack of service record books, just the jackets and folders of all your Bible of who you are in the military, and a young Marine captain sitting across from it, and recruits would be sitting down in front of him. And I remember just sneaking a glance before I got my seat, and the captain reached out and shook the recruit's hand. And that really struck me as odd. It's a real horrific environment where you're perpetually yelled out. You're never going to do it right. You have to do it again, and perpetually. That's the mental breakdown. But that this captain was shaking this recruit, nothing. We're maggots, hand. And I thought that was really odd. When I got my turn to go into the office, the captain stood up, shook my hand, said, "This is going to be just a nice casual talk." I sat down, and that's it. That's all I remember. The next thing that happened, I was in my bunk in the barracks, and I was on the top rack, and I remember I woke up, and I have never in my life been more disoriented. I had absolutely zero situational awareness. And I was just where am I? Absolutely. And I had the sense that I had been gone. And then I look around, okay, I see the rifles. I know I'm in boot camp, but it was still, and the drill instructor standing there, and he wasn't my drill instructor either. And he's like, "Triplett, you had a spell. You'll be fine. You'll be back to training in no time." And I just went back and went to sleep, and then went on with training. I didn't even think about that for years.
Interesting.
It was, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm just the absolute sleep deprivation. Maybe I just
had a spell.
Out in that office. That's what he said. You had a spell.
Yeah.
And what I found years later was that same experience has been mirrored by 3 Marines that I know for sure. And there's a couple others that have alluded to it unwillingly. And but two friends, one in particular, had the exact same experience. Remembered going into that room. He remembered more of the documents and the papers that was going on, and he ended up working in counter intel in the Marines and retired as a gunny, E7. But he also had more missing time later on in his service, and he was in Syria, and he's in a hardened element doing counter intel work.
Do you know did he describe his experience to you well enough that you can characterize it to us?
He's been a friend of mine since high school. And I actually went and saw him this last summer when Bridget and I got married in Alabama. And he had a period of 45 days that he has no memories of, nothing. 45 days. And it involved stuff that was down in Syria. His buddy that was with him in that same time came through to talk to Ben in Alabama years later. And I said, what happened to us that 45 days? And the guy was just ashen. He says, I thought it was me. He didn't remember either. 45 days, and they don't know what happened to them. It's just gone. And Buddy Ben's a real sharp dude. He makes me look stupid.
Going back to your experience, was there a distinct second time that something like this happened, that you were put through a similar situation again in the Marines?
No. The only other time that it came close to that was actually in the Air Force when I was at SEER school. Survive, evade, resist, escape. It's the toughest training I ever endured. It's a mock prisoner of war simulation, as well as just a survival. And that was in Washington State in February, and 4 feet of snow on the ground. It was not fun. And a lot of the content that remains classified, and interrogation techniques and things like that. That had the flavor during that experience, and some of that is like I've been through this before.
Okay, going back to the first experience, something happened that lay dormant for a prolonged period of time, and then that memory became conscious. Can you set the scene for how that happened and what started to come back to you?
Dr. Sala did a series of interviews, 5 interviews with a former Marine named Michael Gerloff. He went into the Marines about 10 years before I did. His experience was exactly the same. But when he sat down at that desk with that young Marine captain, he remembered everything that happened. He remembered the full details of what the offer the captain made to him. He even had a letter proving they sent a Mars telegram back to his mom and dad, because whenever he checked in, he wasn't able to get his phone call home. And that's when you first get there, you call, say, hey, you get a little script that you read. I have safely arrived, blah, 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 click. And that's your call home. He didn't get that. He asked his captain about getting that call. And he said, I can't do that. He says, but I will send a telegram. He found that telegram. His dad kept it all those years. And which proved that he had met that Marine captain. How he left that room and went into another office. And I've had fuzzy elements of like being in a golf cart, a big, long golf cart, and just admin everywhere, and just tons of paper. I always say the Department of the Navy floats on a sea of paperwork, and it's true. All his recollection, these documents that he was signing away, were Lockheed Martin was prevalent through a lot of all those elements. And when I was watching the series of interviews, because it put me down a rabbit hole for months. I became absolutely just dumbfounded that this guy had gone from the Marine Corps. He, like myself, had been student body president. He was in gifted and talented programs all throughout his education, as was I. He had the experience in boot camp down to the scenario, but he remembered what it was, and that they were offering him a chance to go serve in space with the Marines. And he thought they were yanking his chain. It was like, okay, yeah, somebody's going to pop up a camera as like some hidden camera show. It seems so bizarre. And he says, well, I've only signed up for a I think it was a 2-year reserve or a 2-year active split up, something, different contracts then. But he said that, well, this would be a 20-year commitment. And he says, well, I can't do 20 years. I want to go into college. I'm doing this for the college money, blah, blah, blah. And they said, they'll never even know you were gone. So they kept
Hold that thought for a moment, because this is where this is the
hardest part to swallow. And it's the craziest stuff I've ever heard, Pete.
I even in the world that we're familiar with in UFO studies, we're talking here about the edges of a technology that one can argue exists, but is so far beyond us who are not cleared to know about it. And again, that choice of words. Let's go back to that. You won't
They'll
even be
never
missed.
even know you were gone. And
Continue on.
he said yes, of course, signed up. A lot of his recall about what he did that initial time, fuzzy as all get out for him. And that's why I love this guy's testimony, because he only says what he does remember. Now, he went into the Army after he got out of the Marine Corps, and he was a Ranger. And during this Ranger training, and I know this to be true as well, all the time you would have little blurbs popped outside of the headquarters element or whatever company you're with and saying, hey, we need volunteers for this study, or we need some guys to come up and show for this physical fitness testing. And he signed up for one of those. And it was basically testing a super soldier drug. And what struck me really hard was that the name of the drug was Halcyon. My debut novel is Halcyon's Wake, Faith. Halcyon's not exactly a water cooler word. While he's taking this drug, they encounter what he said were the adversary. The adversary he was fighting were the Draco. The Draco were the figures that I put in my fictional book as these enemies. And it all had a lot of biblical connotations. And his whole highlight, it was like he had just picked up my novel and was spouting out all the information from in there, the characters, the cast, everything was lining up. And my other Marine buddy, when he read my novel, he says, Dale, this is not your imagination. That is what you experienced when you're in the Corps. And I still was like, no, but there's some real solid elements in my mind, having been a load master on cargo planes. And I've flown on every cargo plane that the American Arsenal has, every single one. C5s, 141s, 130s, you name it, I've been on it. I have an absolute vivid memory of walking along a steel corridor, and the side of it is angled about 15 degrees, and it's a dark charcoal gray. And as I'm walking by, I can glance to the right, and I'm looking out, and I'm seeing space. It's stars, and foot and a half thick, like window through that. But it's just, I could see everything. I could see the curvature of the earth. And every time I see the curvature of the earth depicted from space, my first thought in my mind is, I'll see that again. Not I will go see that. I will see that again. And man, I really thought I was losing my mind for a long time. I really did, because, I'm more than nuts and bolts grounded, just the facts, man. But when I have that memory, and then I look, and there's a corridor, a catwalk across the middle of a very vast cargo bay, a cargo space. The colors, the smells, and there's nothing like this in this world, in my reality. And I was thinking, okay, did I see it in a movie? There's always that possibility. How popular culture has a huge impact on us. And
absolutely.
And I love playing devil's advocate with any of it too. It's like, man, if I'm lying, please pull me out on this, or saying, dude, this is a scene right out of Star Trek or something. And I'm a huge Trekkie. I'm a gigantic Trek fan, and anything sci-fi.
This memory that you refer to, it is very much inseparable from every aspect of other major memories that you recall. There's nothing dreamlike about it, or you can't place it.
It's concrete. The other one is of that same vein. It's the most vivid for me, is actually being on, it looks like the command deck of a big ship. It was very dark gray, tiered level up, and I can look to the very top, and you can see like the command element. That's where all the senior officers are. And then it breaks down in tiers in different individual workstations. along this, and I'm facing towards that, and I can see an officer, and he's in a gray uniform, very plain. No, but obviously, there's like a rank either on the sleeve that stood out to me. But I can also, at the same time, I look and I see the moon. And
I was going to say, that man in the green was an officer.
Yeah,
you just knew that.
Just knew this, the way the authority, his body language. He's leaning over somebody else's station. He's pointing at this, and he's barking orders down to the people as he walks. And I remember him coming up and just looking at me really hard, and that's where it ends.
As this memory, does it extend further into more exotic aspects, or those are pretty much the edges of this particular memory?
That's it. Those are the two. And
so being a good devil's advocate,
please do.
Is there any part of you that has been pondering this that can see a logic for officialdom through whatever happened in the Marines to create this illusion in you or any of your comrades or anyone else for that matter that they were part of this entity without actually being there? Can you think of any reason why the forces that be would want? I
would have to acknowledge that possibility, just because of they pumped us through so much full of drugs and stuff. I still don't know what all they dumped into us when we were just at boot camp. You run a gauntlet and you've got corpsmen on each side of you lined up 5 deep, and every pass, you boom, 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 they're pumping another shot into your arm. You can't move your arms for 3 days. The potential for them to manipulate us is absolutely there, and it's beyond just of becoming a Marine, which that's not an easy feat in itself, and it is rebuilding you up into what they want you to be. So I could see the potential for them to be able to manipulate me that way. Yes,
Dale. As time went on, were there other triggerings of memories that you say were related and that to you made sense and added to the fuller picture?
So much of it is a lot of deja vu. A lot of deja vu in the most unlikely places. Well, there's the Air Force, and we flew around the world that mission, and we're hauling trash. We're picking up an engine in Dallas and then taking it out to California. So I get to see a lot of other bases that I had never been to. There's my dogs.
I hope so.
They're keeping us posted. But I went to one base in North Carolina. I believe it was North Carolina. And we were there for 2 or 3 days for something. I knew I knew my way around that base like I had been there my whole life. And guys, please. I had that was just odd to me. I was like, well, the BX is there, and like, well, the guy had said no, that it used to be there. And I kept thinking, well, my dad has never been here. We weren't stationed here. We'd gone to a lot of Air Force bases where you'd fly space available. We'd fly out of Charleston, mostly into Dover in Delaware, but and then into Ramstein or Rhein-Main in Germany. But I knew my way around that base, like I'd been there my whole life. And it was just I said, okay, that's just an odd coincidence. Maybe it's just logically laid out well, but I no, then you're deluding yourself when you say things like that. And it's like, how do I know this place as well as I do? And even remembering something that was there when it wasn't there any longer, how I wouldn't have that knowledge. It was unnatural to have that much of a recollection of being there.
Do you remember the first time that you heard of an entity called the Secret Space Program?
I want to say it was around 2011, 2012.
Sure.
I met you in 2011, I believe it was, in Phoenix. And I lived in Sedona for the year 2012. And I'd heard some inkling of like Corey Goode had come out a few years after that and was talking about the secret space program. And I thought he was completely batshit crazy.
Let's take a moment here for viewers and listeners who are not familiar with Corey Goode's name. Can you give us a compression, a compendium of what Goode's claims are relative to this alleged entity, the secret space program?
David Wilcock brought him out in, like, I want to say 2012, 2013, maybe. Could have been a little bit later, but he was big on Gaia, and he was making the claims of Solar Warden, and that the 20 and back was real, that they were taking your consciousness, putting it either to a clone body, age deceleration, all kinds of speculation. But he was making these very outlandish claims, and I really just laughed at the guy. I thought, nah, keep smoking, brother, and you got the good stuff there. But then to have, and even this week in the media, he's actually trying to copyright the terms SSP and 20 and back, and wants to sue the crap out of anybody that uses them and doesn't give him any credit for it. I don't respect the guy. He strikes me as a charlatan and a con. Now, there are others in the program that I have met that I do respect, that actually remember him being in the programs with him. And I've had 3 people since I started researching this that have reached out to me and says, I know who you are. I know you from this time. And I take every bit of that with a grain of salt, or like a big old salt lick, actually. And just take it as, okay, if they're making these claims, how can they justify this? What do they know? And it started to add up more and more, making sense that this could have happened. This really could have happened. And it threw me for a loop whenever I started pondering that reality, especially the conversations with lifelong friends that have the similar experience. And it's there. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't even like to speculate on it. And,
well, the dynamic seems virtually identical to so many situations that I was privy to as the permanent guest during the years that Bud Hopkins was running really the very first UFO support group. This sense of, please validate that I've got some weird mental condition, and then
right.
I can find out what treatment is available.
Exactly.
But
sure.
What I don't need or don't want is for you to make more real something which I'm extremely anxious about. Just that.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. And not wanting to, they call a lot of these guys the live action role players that are in the SSSP element, where like the ones that'll dress up in the medieval costumes and go out and play in Central Park and bang each other up with fake swords. And the naysayers around this element with the secret space program, they said the same thing, that it's delusional on our parts, that we're wanting to be included, we're wanting to be a part of something, and so we just make it this fantastic element. Hey, yeah, I was taken away to space for 20 years and I never even knew it.
I usually proceed in investigative work with the assumption that the first thing we examine, investigate, research as fully as possible before dismissing it, moving on, is the most mundane, blasé, boring, unsexy possibility. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't prove to be true, we take exactly one step up to the second most.
To the second.
And in your mind, and again, for me, I've never had a guest on the show purporting to take the subject seriously, because my personal bias is so strong. based on a certain amount of willful ignorance. I have read a great deal less than a lot of people have on this subject.
Mhm.
We all have our areas of specialty, but I do something I often criticize other people for, which is having an opinion which is not based on careful study. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but ideally
Right.
we should all aspire to have an informed opinion. When you started to really ponder what were either your actual memories or memories that were put into your mind to create that, comparing them with other people who've actually had those things happen, or who, for whatever reason, is part of a program to make them think they're involved in this. When did you first do some independent reading on it, and what did you read?
I think the first book I read on was actually Dr. Michael Sala, and it was on Solar Warden, and that would have been 2017, I think, 2016, 17, so relatively recently. And then I just gobbled up everything I could get my hands on it. Just knowledge is power. I'm a history teacher. You know, I really throw myself into the books. I see that countdown there as well. Yeah, there's guys out there that I don't believe. There's guys that I think have taken advantage of a situation and are just monetizing anything they can. But I think that goes through the whole UFO community. You know who they are. You know who the ones that are out to rip people off, in spite of all the good things that they may have done prior. That was it almost that impetus where they feel like they have to provide, they have to come up with something new, they have to come up with some revelation.
Yeah.
And that's like how it happened to Adamski and even Greer, and they just go from having done some really, really amazing cutting work, and then all of a sudden it's like, really, dude, you want to charge me $5,000 to go sit in a lawn chair in the desert? Not buying it. But this Michael Gerloff is a series of 5 different interviews that Sala did with him. He's from Missouri, like myself, 2 branches of service, like myself, had more recall, but had gone through the exact same scenarios that I did, and then just the elements of his tale. I really thought that he had just maybe picked up a copy of my book somewhere and was spouting all this. But when I wrote before his testimony, this guy was a cop for 26 years. He was also a UN peacekeeper, having been his time in the military. This guy's straight up, and he was a pretty hardcore commando as well. He's fallen off the face of the earth. Another guy that I respect in this field is actually Tony Rodriguez, and Tony's testimony is really freaking powerful, and he had communicated with Gerloff quite a bit, but Gerloff was getting threats, and he had to just basically get off the grid because the things he was talking about, people didn't want him talking about it. So there's a very real threat there. There are a few others that have a few that I met at a conference in Grafton, Illinois. Tyler Koala and his group there on a journey to truth. Great guys, really are. And that is a journey to truth. So they'll stumble across a few fakes in there and finding the diamonds. And that's anybody in this field is you're going to. I mean, you've had the firsthand experience there with old Mr. Warren. But where people will lie for this, I don't know why anybody would. Why would I want to have my sanity questioned by anybody? And I leave it to the element that, yes, I want to explore the possibility of what this is and look into it more and more. And then at other times I just want to get away from it because it's the ramifications, and then we're just nothing but cattle. And
Yep.
If they've used it, and one guy is apparently an insider, and he said that I had actually done, I think it was a total of 8 20 and backs in the guise of 5 different altars. and different roles throughout. And that to me felt like the live action playing, but the things he was saying were resonating as well. A couple in particular, but I'm still.
Let's hold that thought right now, Dale. We're going to go to break, but we will pick up in 4.5 minutes.
Yes,
this
sir.
is Peter Robbins, my very special guest. Dale.
That's me.
We will be.
It's me, Peter.
Triplett.
Stay
we
here.
will be back in 4 minutes, and don't go away.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
Are we alone in the universe? The most important question facing humanity is on the verge of being settled once and for all. The Mutual UFO Network has been at the forefront of this journey for nearly 50 years. Our members worldwide are dedicated to the research, documentation, and awareness that will shape the future of humanity. Won't you join us?
It's not just a donation.
It's a warm blanket.
It's a bottle of clean water.
It's a roof and a bed.
It's knowing someone cares.
It's feeling safe.
It's a today that's better than yesterday.
Every dollar you can spare helps so much more than you can imagine. Please, donate now to help people affected by Hurricane Ian. Your support is urgently needed.
Discover the Observation Deck, a one-of-a-kind virtual event platform that takes video conferencing to the next level by using avatars to navigate a campus. There's so many areas and activities to choose from. There's a 1,000-seat auditorium, an expo hall, a nightclub, and even a beach. So come attend a conference, take a class, or hear a lecture on the incredible Observation Deck campus. Go to theobservationdk.com.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
And Peter Robbins returning with Meanwhile Here on Earth and my special guest, Dale Triplett in Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Fayetteville, Arkansas. Northwest Arkansas. I've been here for just a little over a year now. I love it down here. And I will see you in Eureka. That's not even an hour from me. So
wonderful. Looking forward to it already.
Oh, you know it. It is a great conference. I have not got to attend, and I've been around it all these years, but it was work related stuff, and I couldn't get loose. But I'm glad you reminded me of that too. I was going to ask my wife, and she gave me permission so I could go.
The secret space program, again, you've mentioned him several times. One of the leading published proponents on it is Dr. Michael Salla. And his books on the subject are, of course, very popular. I copied off of some promotion for one of his books before the show, and it says, Michael Salla's belief: the United States Air Force is experiencing a profound shift in order to aggregate the military's space assets under one authority, they're being moved into a new branch under the purview of the Air Force. This new branch is to be called Space Force. Obviously, a slightly dated remark here, but the true purpose of the Space Force will be to publicly unveil the most well-guarded secrets in the Air Force's stunning arsenal of exotic spacecraft, unconventional weapons, and mind-blowing technologies assembled over more than 75 years since its official emergence. Now, Michael isn't here, of course, and I'm
right.
not in any way asking him to stand up for these words here. This is his belief, arrived at by his own research, but it points to the secret Space Force beginning in 1947, the same
Correct.
year as our modern age of UFOs. From your knowledge and your reading here, I've never had Michael on as a guest, not yet anyway. What do you know or deduce or understand about this program and how it evolved in the way that it did?
When it was actually in 2011, I met William Tompkins out at Phoenix at the Congress. And I thought he was a crazy old man with a really bad toupee. And I did not give the man much time and much credence. But I listened, and I was keeping it in the back of my mind. And then I discovered later on what his accomplishments had been with Lockheed and how he brought up the elements of the SSP probably before anyone else, that he had been working in research and development on these starships while he was there in the late 40s and 50s in California. And his cohort that was with him, PhD of some sort, I forget the guy's name, and Tompkins, of course, has passed on now, but finally got through and looked through his books too, and it adds up to the possibility, just the possibility, and that's enough for me to be able to acknowledge that, okay, if it is in the realm of possible, and the technology that they were leading to back in the late 40s blows my mind. There's more there than I ever wanted to give credit to, because if I acknowledged that it was true and that I had been a part of something like this, then I'm furious with my government. That's and if the insider is right, then it's 120 years of my life that they basically use me as a slave, and in different capacities.
So let's stop here for one moment, because it is certainly a centrally provocative allegation about the program that time displacement technology, for lack of a better term, allows us human beings at the highest, most classified level for this kind of project, that we have actually mastered time travel to the degree that we can not just time travel, but transposition of the innate being, the soul, the whatever word you want to apply to it, that we can take you out for a moment, spend time around you, and that moment's really 20 years. And in that time, you are fighting this war in Alpha Centauri, or serving the greater good of whatever the overriding organization is behind the space program, I find it untenable, and at the same time, because it's you, I'm having to question it. One thing I just wanted to quickly read into the record, in rereading several of Bud Hopkins' books, and even though we were good friends and I worked as an assistant for years, I'm still re-amazed sometimes at his skills as an investigative writer and his ability to bring a point home. And in his opening of Intruders, which is an international bestseller and an absolutely essential book for anyone interested in the subject of UFOs, and I sort of stuck a marker in the pages in question, which I didn't, but he basically, I'll extrapolate, as one should. By 1943, there were many elements within Europe, and word had reached elements within the United States that the Nazis had instituted the final solution, this plan to vaporize all the Jews in Europe. Nobody questioned the Nazis' brutality. For many, that they represented pure evil. Their methodicalness and their desire to overpower the rest of the world. But the idea that there was this machine basically slaughtering men, women, and children in a very dispassionate, extremely effective, and well-organized way was a problem for many people. And one of the leaders of the Polish resistance, who was able to observe this closely for himself, came over to the United States and met with the highest ranking Jewish person in the American government at the time. That was Felix Frankfurter, who was, as I recall, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Right.
And told him about it. And Frankfurter's response was, "I don't believe you." And the freedom fighter basically was about to just begin his harangue. And he said, "It's not that I'm saying it's not true. It's just that I can't
It's hard to believe." I've stumbled across a few Holocaust deniers over the years, and that really chaps my ass.
Yeah, and not to compare the Holocaust to UFO abduction or the secret space program, but we're faced with a threshold here that if you take it seriously, you either have to act on faith that this technology exists, among other things, and that somehow we evolved over the past 75 years to not just be a starfaring civilization, but one that is actively involved in conflicts with other races in space, very much like most of us think of as simply in the realms of science fiction. Also, that if this is going on, knowing, even if you're not deeply involved in, oversights in Pentagon and Department of Defense spending, where black budget projects probably account for trillions of dollars, where is the money possibly coming from over the past 3/4 of a century to create bases in space, transportation modes, to keep the machine well oiled, so to say, and keep it completely secret? Of course, keeping it secret is in a way one of the easiest parts, in that it's so difficult to believe. So even if there are leaks,
comes at a price.
Yeah. I know I'm hitting you with several big questions at once, but let's go to the first one about this technology.
My grandfather was 104th Infantry Division in World War II, and he was part of the Middle Baldora liberation. the concentration camp at Mittelbau-Dora and at Nordhausen, where they were making the V2s. And von Braun was building
slave labor,
the America rocket, the one that could reach out and touch New York. That was their big plan. My grandfather alluded to it years later, that he saw things there beyond the horrors of the concentration camp itself and the conditions that they were living in Mittelbau-Dora. It was that even the person said that they were sending him from Mittelbau-Dora to Auschwitz, and he thought he was going to a vacation paradise. He says he'd already been through hell in Mittelbau. And I had never realized that. But Grandpa were just sitting there one night. I was probably about 12 or 13. And he was smoking a cigarette and drinking a cup of coffee, and he's just kind of looking off in the distance. And he looked over at me. He says, I saw some things there, Dale. He goes, that nobody would ever believe. And I remember, he's like, well, what are you talking about? And he says, well, they had us haul some things out of there. And he says, I just don't know what that was. And he knew what the V2 was. He knew what the rockets were. They were all around. He had tons of pictures of them that were all in various stages of assembly. He knew what those were. For him to be dumbfounded about something that he saw there. And that goes back into, you look at the Vril Society and the whole potential of a breakaway German civilization. I have not been able to, I can verify the Vril Society's existence, but everything else as far as the German breakaway element and going to Antarctica for the breakaway, I can't find anything. I can't find any primary source documents that would allude to that other than being an intelligence operation from the Russians in the 80s in planning that seed of a breakaway civilization. I always thought it was a compelling possibility. We're always obsessed with the Germans, the Nazis, and World War II. And how many broke away to Argentina? How many did we bring home with paperclip here to the States? And when was the Fourth Reich going to reemerge? And but
so you feel like, in a way, the birth of the United States modern post-war, we really didn't have much of an intelligence apparatus. We had none, literally, in the First World War.
Right.
That great quotation from our Secretary of State, as I recall, going into the war, that gentlemen do not read other gentlemen's mail. Well, that changed.
Yeah. Lots.
But that you feel that this program may well have been technologically driven the same way our modern above board space program was technically driven primarily by Germans that we had taken, brought over, made our own, and set loose on where they had left off at home.
The one thing that this has really forced me to look at a little bit more in depth than I have in the past is just consciousness itself, and our very understanding of consciousness. I always think of that Max Planck quote when they asked him what he had learned the most, father of quantum physics, and that consciousness is everything, and that there is no out there. It's all in here, and that time itself is a construct of consciousness, not the other way around. So it's wrapping my head around that a little bit more. I don't know where the math and physics buildings are in any college I've gone to. I'm a book dude. And
my understanding of basic physics is extremely basic, but I've read some of Max Planck's writings, in part because I just have found his mind so incredibly sharp, and he can explain things to people like me that I can get at least the broader sense of the concept. Also because he is the originator of a favorite quotation of mine, that when we talk about change in the world of science, he also was a Nobel Prize winning physicist in the 30s. But the quote was, "Science progresses one funeral at a time."
Exactly.
The old guard may die off. At the same time, again, I know we're talking about theoretical matters beyond my understanding, But at a certain point, I guess I hit my own internal wall. And this is a sticking point of mine. Just that you're alive, you're going along, but we figured out a way to take you. As far as everybody's concerned, a beaten time has passed. But as far as your experience over there is concerned, you've just spent 20 years. But we also have a way that you can come back, and the aging process will not have affected you physiologically at all. And you will either remember it if we program you to remember it or not. And continued thanks for your service to the secret space program that you didn't voluntarily join up, but we can show you the signature on the paperwork if we're pressed. I think this has to be particularly challenging for a mind like yours, where some of this, experientially, you feel it in your DNA. If I'm getting a level of sincerity right, that you are part of this, and that the memories are, incomplete, unclear, and fogged and veiled. And the other part of you thinking, wait a minute, how? But
right, it just defies even just fiction. You can't even make this shit up. Nobody would buy it, and it's just hard to. Part of me wanted to guess, like, okay, cool, I'll go with these hypnotists and see if I can do some regression and do some of the past life elements, and I put a lot of credence in hypnosis. I really do. I've never been successfully put under, and all the experiences I've had, and it's just like there's a block, and I'm sure you ran across that with Bud and several of the people that were there. Some that just did not take to hypnotism as much as others. But I guess everybody is capable of it, but some are not. And when I was looking into that, and it wasn't exorbitant cost-wise, and I thought this is a good thing, but then it scared me. Maybe there's a reason I don't remember. And maybe there's a reason that I only remember the little bits that I do. And I have these tiny little nuggets. But to face the reality that if it did happen, if everything that all these others are purporting to have said, and this happened, I don't know if I could mentally be able to process 120 years worth of memories of an experience. I think that would just crush anybody mentally. I don't give a shit. Well, how your faculties are to be exposed to that level, it would shatter my world.
Do you have a sense of, even in the abstract or deductive reasoning, or that kind of divining rod we all carry in our mind that leads us on to a degree energetically of where the dip is, speaking allegorically, of course, but still, that do you have any sense of what your responsibilities were, what you were actually involved in, any idea of the backstory of what was a conflict that you were serving on a certain side of?
Most of everything that I get, and I've even had a few dreams lately trying to quit smoking, so I started wearing those patches, and it sucks quitting smoking, but those patches, pretty incredible dream recall.
Yes,
and I
agree.
I have zero. I mean, my whole life, unless I kept like a recorder right there by the bedside or a book, and I could write down immediately, it was just boom. It's in the ether and gone the minute I woke up.
That's a reason to sleep with a recorder by your bed or a pad and pen.
And with those patches, it's like, man, I can, and it's even those same memories that I have that I share with you. There are things that I can do now in a dream. It's like being it's like a Groundhog Day illness. It's again and it's again and it's again. And I'm walking that catwalk, but I can look over now and I can see the other operator. I could see there's a boom that went along the length of the cargo bay, but instead of a traditional ball and hook underneath like you would have for hoist, it was like a upside down pyramid. That makes no sense of what that's for, but and you look down and you can see where like the cargo bay would open up and then you can pull things out from the ground. And there's no vessels like that. We don't have anything in our arsenal like that. Nobody does. But I see it. I smell the machine oil. I can feel the hum of the craft. And the same on the command deck, that same view and looking and seeing that guy. And now I can turn my head and I can see more of the moon's surface and being right outside the moon. Just bam, right there. It's funny. I'll watch documentaries on like on Ceres and on Jupiter and look at, and there's that whole deja vu thing. It's like, wait a minute, that's not right.
Yeah.
And noticing something is wrong. Like, no, this is over here, not there. And those little coinky dinks that pop up occasionally, it's like, okay, well, maybe I saw a documentary 100 years ago and have forgotten that. I went back and like revisiting episodes of Battlestar Galactica, the original. And man, there's a whole lot of stuff that they were pushing in our brains as kids then that I had never really considered. And it impacted me huge. And it's obviously a huge sci-fi fan. I write science fiction. But I look back and say, oh man, that was planting some seeds. That was planting some seeds for the potential of what this is. But I think if my involvement started in this program, it would have been the time that I was at Dyess Air Force Base in Texas. And that would have been at about beginning in 1973 through 1975. That's when I had the first UFO encounter for one. And then over the years, I've had several more. Up there that 1 year with Burroughs and Peniston, and we were all out there in Enchantment. And man, that blew me away. It was real. It was tangible. It was there. And I'm with these 6 other people and we're watching these things dancing around the sky and right there in front of us. And John's like, you ain't seen nothing yet. He did tell you hi, by the way. And I talked to him yesterday. So old big Bubba John, I guess he's doing all right.
Please say hi from me.
I will, most definitely.
A question comes up for me here, and it's one where what we're talking about and how it may impact on the creative mind, and how where there's a need to exorcise something that has happened to us that for one reason or another we're unable to just lay out in clear prose or say a narrative, where sometimes we turn to fiction, or in the case of a visual artist, a painting, a drawing, or sculpture. You could say a composer would turn to a song or an orchestration. At a certain point, as you are a published novelist, and again, I admire your modesty, among other things, that it's not a big deal to you that you have professionally overseen the editing of more than 30 books.
53 to date.
Is to successfully and well edit one book is a great accomplishment. I also love the fact that it balances out with times in your life when, in another life you might have picked up a pick and a shovel, but you were a long haul driver. You have driven big rigs over 1 million effing miles all over this country. And
that was great, because having been an American growing up abroad, we tried to come home every summer back to Missouri, but couldn't always do it. The first time we went to Europe, we didn't come back. Dad was too junior and it was just too expensive. But every other year when we went back, beginning in 81, we would come back every summer or special occasion around the fall for holidays. And it was a great time for me when I come back and I got out of the Marines and I started driving. Good chance to see my own country for the first time. And I loved it.
But at a certain point, consciously, unconsciously, it doesn't really matter on a certain level, you decided to write a novel that we'd characterize as science fiction genre. But it's not really science fiction.
No, it's not. And
let's talk about how
really
you
thought those guys
began
were
the
ripping me
process
off.
even.
I had published a short story in Andromeda in Space in Flight magazine. Andromeda Spaceways in Flight magazine, Australian obscure sci-fi mag. Made, I think I got 26 Australian bucks for the short story. That was my first time at print. I was like really kind of stoked about that. And that was
Great.
about 05, maybe even as early as 03. And it was just a standalone short story, which is now the prologue of that novel. But when the recession hit in 07, I was in Phoenix and got laid off. My ex at the time said, hey, turn this into a full-length novel. And over the space of 2012, primarily, I'd started in 2006 and I finished it in 2012. But most of that was written right there, sitting at the Sundowner and at Mooney's Irish Pub in Sedona. And it just flowed out of me, man. And it's fantastical. And then I hear these guys making their statements years later. And I'm like, man, this guy he had to have read my book. He had to have. And I'll go back and even reread sections. And I'm thinking, wow, this is more of a coincidence. This guy's saying in his account the Anunnaki that he brings back in. I brought him back in. They're speaking Aramaic. And they're larger than life. They're like 9 to 20 feet tall, depending on what the creatures are. All these things that people are writing out and their supposed recall from their time in the SSP it's a script of my novels. And it's like, well, hey, if that's the way my subconscious is dealing with this, and I just thought I had a really good imagination, but apparently not.
So literally, as you were writing it, nothing was shaking loose until sometime after it was written, and you actually.
After. And I'm a Stephen King kind of writer. I build the characters up and know them well enough, and then I throw them in the scenario, and then they tell me where we're going. I've got some overall arching themes and stuff that I'd like to carry through, and
without being a spoiler, because I would like people to buy and read your book, and we'll go over. It's one book or two at this point.
Right now it's two. This is the first one, episode 1, Halcyons Wake Faith, and then the second one is Halcyons Wake Love, and then the third one will be Trust. So it's faith, love, trust, of the three elements.
The first one. Would you say the first one?
The first one I actually wrote is my children's book that I published
Yay.
a long time ago.
Would you say that the first book in the series is the one that, upon reflection, bears the most resemblance to things that you feel you may have been through yourself?
Yes, and that's not only just my own sense of familiarity to it, but the descriptions from other people about being in different kingdoms that have got established in this and the story, and they're like, dude, how did you know that? How did you know that the fixtures look like this? How did you know that it was like a sculpted stone and not just a brick structure? All of these little bitty things that start to add up and make you go,
Could you just sketch out the plot for us without, again, being a spoiler anyway, but give us a sense of what the story is about and where it goes without telling us directly where it goes?
A lone astronomer spies Halcyon, and they think it's a comet, and it's headed to the planet, and this is the one. This is the death sentence for all of us. And within the prologue itself is the arrival of that, how humanity reacts, and how Koreas blow each other up, and everybody else goes to throw in nukes, but China, Russia, and the U.S. don't nuke each other. But the world's already changed, and they're taking the last bit of some scientists, got the space shuttle out of mothballs and trying to get as many people up to the ISS, and then move the ISS away with some plan. It's just last ditch efforts to try and save humanity, and are some of the smarter folks. But Halcyon arrives, and it doesn't act like it predicted. It just stops, and there's sci-fi twist there. Some people that have gathered to greet these coming visitors are down in at Ayers Rock and Uluru and get beamed up, to use a term. And then Halcyon just kind of frosts the planet with this pink stuff. And there's one little hole inside of it. But you've got people on the ISS, and they can't see what's happening on Earth, which was already wrecked by Armageddon nuclear war.
Sure.
But it's how these people from the space station, how they're watching what's unfolding on Earth, and then you really start going down the rabbit hole of interesting these other creatures. And but I thought I did real well. I'm actually really proud of the book. I am. It was a labor of love. I mean, it took me 5 years to write the first one, 5 years to write the second one. Probably take me another 5 years to write this lousy one too. But I'm good looking, not rich, so I got to work for a living.
Yeah, no question that we do have to do that. If there is a secret space program, and if it is as far-flung and technologically advanced as you and others are suggesting it may be, who and what are some of the forces, intelligences, civilizations that we are engaged with? And when I say engaged with, am I right to assume that this is not like a Star Trek thing where we're making friends? And
we are, according to a lot of the accounts, but the currency of the universe is DNA, and we have lots of it. And that's what trading. And when you look at the German breakaway civilizations and the accounts that come in, there's zero accountability. It's popping into this vast universe, going someplace, taking advantage of someone, and not having to worry about it because you just leave, never have to come back. And the implications of just how dark it is, and it's all about acquiring more and more and more technology. That seems to be the perpetual impetus behind it, is gathering more and more tech to maintain this facade that we're a prison planet. That we're a prison planet, and that
who is involved, or a guess who is involved in the overseeing, the management?
I would say the Navy, but not the Navy you and I know. I really think it's the Navy. I think that they have had the purview over a lot of the UFO phenomena, UAP, even when that came out. I think it's Navy.
I agree with you there.
I really do. That they have the oversight. But I also think that the Draco element that I bring up, these giant lizard suckers, that they may very well be real, and that they own this planet.
Obviously, the security classifications governing what I think it's fair to say is an above top secret entity like this, guarding their secrets, their hardware, their properties, the manufacturing, the administration. Is this a part of what we'll call, there are many terms for it, part of the secret government that goes above the knowledge or the awareness of even the highest elected officials, do you feel? No, I shouldn't have said that, I think.
They're not fans, man.
This is all speculation, but
okay. It is speculation, and I don't even know if I could even make a healthy element of speculation about that, because, like I said, I'm studying more consciousness, and I think it was Michael Sullivan, who's the PhD out of California. He was one of the first to start using hypnosis back in 50s, 60s, and was using it for past life regression. And the same.
Can you quiet the troops there,
guys? One moment. So
that's good. They
get in the backyard. So they'd like to let everybody know that they're in church. There's probably deer back there right now. That's why they're going at it. But I apologize. They'll shut up here eventually. One thing that I've learned when I looked at the consciousness element was when he stumbled on that element of the lives between lives. Are you familiar with that? Where lives between lives.
Yes.
Where it's not just looking at a past life you may have experienced. I believe we truly are immortal and that we do this again and again and again and again and again.
No. I've heard of it.
I also know that when you're in these soul clusters with these groups of family and people that you're constantly in the same life repeatedly with in some fashion, that they're part of this group. But one thing that he had discovered in all his thousands and thousands of sessions with these people was that prior to even being born here now, in this life that I'm living now, that I knew basically what was going to happen. Not an element of an absolute predestination. One sec, Pete.
Live radio, folks. You don't get this on podcasts. It's all edited out. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Wow, the stun gun worked great.
As soon as my wife drives up to, they'll go at it again. I apologize for that. But anyway, continue with that thought. If we have all this knowledge in our immortal selves and we're in these soul clusters in our groups and our lives between lives, then I knew that I would be doing the SSP in this lifetime and still chose to come through and do it. Does that make sense? So there's
in
almost
a very esoteric manner.
Right. That it wasn't a surprise, but it's like, hey, okay, cool. I'll go live in space for 120 years during this 75, 80 years that I get to be here. Why not go do that? I can see myself being wanting to absolutely do that, and being a space nut anyway. I'd love to get out there. So
fair enough.
I don't think we're blindsided by it, but I think it is just potentially, and not only in speculation, that it is a matter of control or of our planet, and it's been this way for a long time.
Dale, I'm kind of pulling back for a wider focus here on the world of UFO studies and the various manifestations. Of course, we know that when we use terms like UFO and UAP, we understand that we're talking about a broad umbrella of phenomena or actual technologies under intelligent control by other intelligences. And at the same time, we have an ongoing argument, or a series of them in our area here, of are they good or are they bad, which for me is the wrong question to ask. The good ones are good, the bad ones are bad, to reduce it to a very simple statement. But there are those who feel right now that anyone who has had a history or had reported or experienced a negative kind of interaction or abduction is purely the kind of victim of a military abduction, which are being done wholesale to give all these wonderful other intelligences a lot of bad press, which I think is naive, the same way that somebody who has genuinely had negative, disturbing, frightening, genuinely threatening experiences should tar people who are having positive transcendent experiences as being naive, or as some have said, and I don't know what's right or wrong. I think all these things are interesting and anything is possible once we get into this area of the unknown, that the other intelligences over the last decades have just gotten better at the PR aspect of what they do and making people believe that it's all positive and all beatific. In the meantime, it's a cookbook or some other darker reality behind it. I don't know if I'll ever know, but I do know, as real as we're sitting here, that people absolutely have genuinely negative experiences, and I don't believe they're misunderstood or they're vibrating at the wrong frequency, or
Right.
they grew up with a great deal of anxiety and so are not open to taking a risk and opening themselves up to this cosmic love.
Did you interview Terry Lovelace?
Say again?
Did you interview Terry Lovelace?
I haven't yet, but he's on the list. Hopefully in the next couple of months for sure.
His account, oh my goodness. His account and his abduction scenario actually lends a lot of credence to the SSP.
And all the more reason I want to have him on there.
When he's on that craft and he sees military personnel in uniforms he doesn't recognize, and he's in the Air Force at the time, but he knows that this is like an international crew that's maintaining this while they're there in this catatonic state and just kind of dumbfounded through the whole thing. And it's a harrowing account, his abduction.
Yes, I'm familiar with the account, and once again, Terry carries a lot of credibility. I mean, he's adamant and he's articulate and he's passionate and he's smart.
Yes.
At the same time, I wonder again if this is all some kind of shadow and light show, a cosmic sort of kabuki play, an Indonesian
and even those elements, because people have the false memories. People have the memories that are put there in place to block it, to keep you from looking at the truth.
Sure.
But instead of seeing this, and I will have to acknowledge that. So, hey, all
we
my
can
time
do
in the
it.
military, you betcha they could have planted something in that just to put a false seed in the back that maybe I'll buy into this.
But once again, as devil's advocate to my own position, why would we do that? Why would we establish a program that's costly, that is always going to be in jeopardy of being exposed? Is there really that much of a pronounced threat out there that we are aware of and have been aware of for all this time? We, euphemistically speaking, once again, like the UFO-related abduction phenomena, it's so easy for an otherwise intelligent, perceptive, open-minded, decent person to say, come on, it's just, the debunker's mantra of it can't be.
It can't be. So
therefore it isn't.
Right.
Therefore it's something else. And my responsibility in life is to speak very slowly and explain reflections on clouds and swamp gas and, Brownian movement on the eyeball, one of my favorites, and that you're not experiencing what you're experiencing.
Right.
It really is a bit matrixy.
Family connection. It is, and it's just it's sobering to even contemplate that as a reality. And it's like, man, like I said, a part of me doesn't want to know. Part of me doesn't want to dig any further.
That's right.
If I'd been with the Dark Fleet, if I'd been with Nachlaff, and I'll hear names and I do speak really good German. I really do. I'll still hear something from accounts like the name of a ship, and I know that. I know what that boat is, and it's not a vessel floating in the Atlantic. It's in the heavens, and just uncanny things like that just really freaked me out a little bit.
Dale, would you talk a little bit about the Black Fleet as it exists in the understanding of folks who are studying possibilities, reality, or already take seriously the idea of a secret space program?
And that's a conversation in itself, and what I know, and just that it is part of the German breakaway civilization, had gone to Antarctica, that the Vril had set up this, they were able to tap into and communicate with the Draco, and were given the resources. And
the Draco are? The
Draco are a reptilian species, highly intelligent, very, very evil. And they will eat us. They actually will eat us. And when you get into that, I don't like to go in the whole Q stuff in that realm. And
sure, I appreciate your giving this some voice, even if it's not from.
And I just don't know.
Yeah,
anyway, they're a breakaway civilization. They're based on Nazi ideals in so many ways, but a lot of them are even pre-Nazism, and it's just more of that whole German elitist mindset. But Tony Rodriguez, they claim that on the Sirius colony, none of the people that are in the programs, they're all told that Earth isn't there anymore, that it doesn't exist, that it was a war had happened, and that's how they were lucky to be this part of this breakaway civilization, and that's why they create their own little idyllic utopia out there. But you still have slaves, very dominant in the societies, but the Nachwaffen is the Dark Fleet. And they are essentially Germans in space that freaking fly all over the place and just do whatever they want. And you've got lots of different opposing factions. You get people that are within the Nachwaffen that are good, and it's a drama in its own right trying to figure that one out. But a lot of me didn't want to read other people's accounts, testimonies not order to
predispose yourself one way or the other.
But I'm of the inkling that no, I'm from Missouri, so you're going to show me first anyway. But take it all with a grain of salt, and the knowledge and accumulate it up. And whenever, that's the way I've been able to beat charlatans in the past, is catching them in their own damn lies. And their lack of consistency.
Yeah.
When the people within this field that I highly respect, and I believe them, I really believe them, the story hasn't changed. New information might come to light, but nothing gets changed. And to me, that consistency is what's always going to be a hallmark.
Has anybody published around this subject who you would recommend to people like me, who are open-minded skeptics when it comes to this?
Tony Rodriguez, his book.
Talk about Tony's book and give us the title there.
Oh my God! Now this is a little quirk here too. I had befriended Tony because his account had really intrigued me, and I was reaching out to him to try and put me in contact with Michael Gerloff, the gentleman whose accounts were really struck home. Tony found out I was an editor, and I said, yeah, I'll love to edit your book. I will love that. When he sent me the document and I signed my non-disclosure agreements and all that stuff, and I've done like I said, I've got more than 53 books under my belt now.
That many.
3 laptops crashed every time I tried to open his document. Whenever I'd get to the first look at the book, I would get physically ill, and I would have to walk away from the computer, go out and breathe.
You've never had that experience before?
Never.
Interesting.
And I've covered some really a couple of books I did for David Weatherly, some that we couldn't even publish because it was just of a real controversial nature, some illegal shit. But that give you nightmares for a little bit. Some of the gin elements, from the desert, and it was really creeped me out. But I got through the book, got it done. I love this subject matter, and to be able to have a paying gig, I needed the money, but I could not work on that book, not one bit. When it came back out, and then I gobbled it up in that day, and I was glad. So, yeah, it's absolutely Series Colony Cavalier by Tony Rodriguez. I cannot recommend it enough, and because his account is very different from mine, that he was purely civilian and ended up in this program from malevolent reasons, from a petulant kid whose dad was part of Illuminati. But that's definitely, if anybody wants to look at this and see somebody that I think has really got a good finger on the pulse of this, is Tony Rodriguez.
Can you characterize it Michael's experience briefly.
Michael's the one I married my own. Just he saw triangle craft when he was young in his youth. He had the time in the Marine Corps where he remembered them making the deal about being in the secret space program. His later involvement with Halcyon as the drug, and that introducing him to the Draco. There's tons of things then from his account, his descriptions of these other creatures, and it's not a real play-by-play. It's not a full recall, and where he has little snippets like I do, but it all added up to the things that he could remember, and just his integrity and the character of the guy. It made me really buy into it. I'll send you the link to his interviews by Sala. Those are several years up, and oh my God, it's just it's a wealth of information. When you listen to it, if you're not believing it, by the time you're done, you'll be like, okay, maybe Dale does have a little bit of something here that it's worth looking into. But I know we're getting ready to wrap up here. I thank you for having me on, man. And I actually thank you for just taking the time to even consider this. I know that there's a lot of mainstream guys on the research side that they just dismiss it. Well, just like Frankfurter, I don't believe you. And because it is incredulous. Without a doubt.
Just because we don't believe something doesn't mean it's not true.
Exactly.
And again,
hard pill to swallow.
Thank you for spending this time with us. This is not an easy subject you're not even trying to champion it. You are really being pulled in both ways as
absolutely as
a rational man.
Like I said, anybody who makes definitive claims in this realm, ignore them. And anybody that makes definitive claims about this unknown, I fully ignore them too. That's like, sorry, you can tell me what your experience was, but I'm not going to buy it off hook, line, and sinker just because you told me to. Yeah. No.
Dale, would you hold up your books again, give the titles, and let folks know where they can get them?
On Amazon, that's Halcyon's Wake Faith, Halcyon's Wake Chronicles Episode 1. And the other one is Halcyon's Wake Love, Episode 2. And all this symbolism, all these things too pop out from the SSP, believe it or not. And whenever,
if folks want to get in touch with you, either with a question about what we've been talking about tonight, or if they're looking for a damn good editor for their book, their manuscript, where can they get in touch with you?
Reach out on Facebook. I'm there, Arbor Dale Triplett. It'll just be Dale Triplett. But you'll see my gray mug right there with my wife in the picture. But I'm on Facebook quite a bit, so you can reach out to me there, and I'm very approachable. And I love any and all questions on this. Yeah. I really do. Knowledge is power, and we don't know what we don't know, and I refuse to put on blinders and ignore it. Yeah. When there's too much, there's just enough substance to keep me suckered in.
Well. Please send my love and best wishes to your parents on their 54th anniversary.
I most definitely will.
It's been great spending this time with you. Already looking forward to spending some real time with you, 3-dimensional, corporeal, in this world, in Arkansas, April 15th and 14th for the Ozarks Mountain UFO Conference. I hope a bunch of you folks will come as well.
You'll like that.
Otherwise, if you've enjoyed the show, please tell your friends. Stay well. Stand up for what you believe in and be kind to each other. We'll see you next week.
Take care, Pete.